Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana.
Jashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
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 Prabhupada. So, today we begin the second canto, second chapter. Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. So, I will explain a little about the Sanskrit, then we will chant it. Even Krishna Priya has a verse on her phone. This definitely is.
Tech.
This definitely isn't New Age. So, Sri Suku Vacha, you understand, Sri Suka said, Evam, thus Pura, in the past, which Prabhupada translates prior to the manifestation of the cosmos. The word prior seems to be cognate with Sanskrit Purva or Pura. Dharaniya, by such a conception, Atma Jomir, that's Lord Brahma, Prabhupada says of Ramaji, who is his womb is actually the Supreme Soul, Krishna. Atma Jomir. Nashtam Smriting is lost memory. And this is a theme throughout the Bhagavatam, that we have to remember Krishna, we have to remember our original position. So Brahma has lost memory. Nashtam Smriting Pratyavarudhya, by regaining it. In other words, sort of Pratyavarudhya, sort of removing whatever was blocking his memory. Pratyavarudhya tushtat, because of appeasing the Lord, from the Lord was satisfied with him. Tata, in that way, sasarja idam, he created this. As I've explained many times in Sanskrit, like in Spanish or Portuguese, you have three levels of demonstrative pronouns. You can say this, which means that which is closest to you, or that which is farther away, or even the farther one. Esto, eso, and aquello, for example, in Spanish. Same thing in Sanskrit. So in Sanskrit, the neuter demonstrative pronoun that's closest to you is just this, that which is closest to you. And therefore in Sanskrit philosophical jargon, this just means this material world, because this, meaning that which is right where you are, is the material world, because this is being addressed to conditioned souls. So therefore, for example, the Isa Upanishad can simply say Om Purnamada. That farther thing is Purna, which means the spiritual world. Purnamidam. This is complete, meaning this world. So here we have the same language. Sasarja, just the past tense of the verb to create. He created this, meaning he created this material world. So Sasarja idam, amogha dristir. Brahma, whose vision, drishti, is amoga, which probably translates clear vision. Amoga can mean like unfailing, infallible. Mogam means sort of useless, and amoga means something which doesn't fail. So amoga drishti, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that those evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartiyatiha jaha aghairindya rao mogam partha sajivati, that those who don't keep the cycle of sacrifice going live in vain. So the word in vain is mogam. So amoga means not in vain, or not unfailing, something like the English unfailing. So amoga drishtir, unfailing vision. Yatha, just as Upyayat Prak, before, actually, Prabhupada said it was created. Um, I think, in a sense, it means Upyaya, before the previous annihilation. Upyayat Prag, or before the, or as it was, so formerly, Vyavasaya Buddhi, with his ascertained intelligence, fixed intelligence. Of course, you know this word, Vyavasaya, which means determination, resolve, from the famous Bhagavad Gita verse, Vyavasaya Atmika, Atmika Buddhi, that those whose buddhi, those whose reasoning, those whose intelligence is Vyavasaya Atmika, constituted of determination, resolve. Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhi. And so here, the same word, Vyavasaya Buddhi, which is the same as in the Bhagavad Gita, intelligence, which is, in other words, you really made up your mind. You're really determined. This is what I'm going to do, and you don't turn back. That is Vyavasaya Bhuti. So that's what this verse is. Now we'll chant it together. Shri Sukho Vacha
Shri Vacha
Evam Pura
Evam Pura
Dharanaya
Dharaya
Atmajanir.
Abhayanir
Oh, Shri Sukho Vacha
Shri Sukha
Evam Pura Dharanayatma Jonir.
Evam
Pura Dharanayatma Jonir. Evam Pura Dharanayatma Jonir.
Evam
Pura Dharanayatma
Mayonir
Nashtam Smriting Pratyavarudya Tushtat. Nashtam Smriting Pratyavarudya Tushtat. Nashtam Smriting Pratyavarudya Tushtat.
Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarujyastar
Tathasa Sarjedam Amoga Drishtir. Tathasa Sarjedam Amoga Drishtir. Tathasa Sarjedam Amoga Drishtir.
Tathasa
Sarjedam Amoga Drishtir. Yatapya Prag Vyavasaya Buddhi. Yatapya Prag Vyavasaya Buddhi. Shri Sukuvacha
Shri Sukha
Evam Pura Dharanayatma Joni. Evam Pura Dharanayatma Joni. Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarudyatushtat. Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarudyatushtat. Tathasa Sarjedam Amoga Drishtir. Tathasa Sarjedam Amoga
Drishtir
Yatapyayat Prag Vyavasaya Buddhi.
Yatapya
Yat Prag Vyavasaya Buddhi. So, anyone want to try their luck? No one? You want try it.
Shri Sukuvacha
Sri Sukuvacha
Evam Puradharachama Evam Puradharyatama Yonir
Evam Puradharanayatma Jonir
Yastam Smitim Pratavarudya to start
Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarudyadushta
Tata Sarestam Amogadristir
Tatasa Sarjeta Mamoga Drishtir
Yatapayati Vivasaya Buddhi
Yatapyayat Pragyavasaya Buddhi. Well, it is a bit intimidating, I guess, this verse. Sanskrit. So, Prabhupada's translation. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. To stop from the Lord who was satisfied. Thus he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before. So Prabhupada's translation. The example cited herein of Sri Brahmaji is one of forgetfulness. Brahmaji is the incarnation of one of the mundane attributes of the Lord. Being the incarnation of the passion mode of material nature, he is empowered by the Lord to generate the beautiful material manifestation. Yet, due to his being one of the numerous living entities, he is apt to forget the art of his creative energy. This forgetfulness of the living being, beginning from Brahma down to the lowest insignificant ant, is a tendency which can be counteracted by meditation on the Virat Rupa of the Lord. This chance is available in the human form of life. And if a human being follows the instruction of the Srimad Bhagavatam and begins to meditate upon the Virat Rupa, then revival of his pure consciousness and counteraction of the tendency to forget his eternal relationship with the Lord can follow simultaneously, counteraction of that tendency. And as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, the Vyavasaya Buddhi, as mentioned here and in the Bhagavad Gita, follows at once. As soon as this forgetfulness is removed, the Vyavasaya. So Prabhupada is saying that all of us have to overcome our forgetfulness. And this is what the Lord himself says in the Bhagavatam 4:28-55. 53 actually, this one. Do you remember the Supreme Soul? Do you remember the Supreme Soul? Because if we actually came from something like, what do they say? The Tatastha Shakti, which is absurd because it's not a place, it's just a philosophical category. So how could the soul originally come from a philosophical category, which is absurd?
People say that.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's
Like
nothing.
they come from you are detached to Shakti, doesn't he? How do you come from detached to Shakti?
I know it's absurd, but they do say that because it's a free country. And how can you remember what you never knew? And we're supposed to go back to home, back to the Tatastha Shakti. Anyway, won't get into that now. And as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, the Vyavasaya Buddhi, as mentioned here and in the Bhagavad Gita, follows at once. So Prabhupada says this chance is available in human life. In other words, Prabhupada is saying here that the case of Brahma, where he forgot and now he has to remember Krishna, that's all of us. It's not just Brahma. All of us are in that situation where we have to remember that we are eternal loving servants of Krishna. And we've got to get back to work for Krishna. That's our real happiness. That is our real life. There is no other real life. And basically, we waste a lot of time in this world. I mean, eons. And one can even waste time in this life, just fantasizing about a happy situation. And it's interesting because the fantasy is the cause of the unhappiness. What could be more ironical than that? The very our because everyone's got their little pet fantasy molded out of their particular cute little combination of gunas, right? Because everyone has their taste. Everyone has their taste in food and this and that and the other thing. And so each of us, we're busy sort of fashioning these fantasies, and then we spend our whole life like a dog chasing his tail, chasing the fantasy. And we all do this. It's absurd, actually, if you think of it. We're just all we have to do is just decide once and for all, and that's what Vyavasayatmi Kabhuti means, deciding once and for all that I'm part of Krishna, I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. My only real happiness is Krishna, so I'm going to stop wasting time and just get to it. And that's my real life. That's Vyavasayatmi Kabhuti in a nutshell. So Prabhupada said, as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, forgetting that I'm an eternal loving servant of Krishna, the Vyavasaya Bhuti is mentioned here and in the Bhagavad Gita 241. Prabhupada mentions that in his purport, follows at once. This ascertained knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, this ascertained knowledge of the living being leads to loving service of the Lord, which the living being requires. The kingdom of God is unlimited. Therefore, the number of the assisting hands of the Lord is also unlimited. This is beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful composition. This is Prabhupada.
So beautiful.
Yeah, it's very beautifully. Therefore, the number of assisting hands of the Lord is also unlimited. It's not like, sorry, we don't need you. You can go back to the Mahatattva. The Bhagavad Gita 13:14 asserts that the Lord has his hands, legs, eyes, and mouths in every nook and corner of his creation. This means that the expansions of differentiated parts and parcels called jivas or living entities are assisting hands of the Lord. And so it's very interesting. Prabhupada translates or interprets that famous statement in the Gita, chapter 13, that everywhere are his hands and eyes and so on, is saying this means the Lord's servants are everywhere, which is another way to look at it. Uh, so, those assisting hands of the jivas are of the Lord, assisting hands of the Lord are everywhere, and all of them are meant for rendering a particular pattern of service to the Lord. We are all unique. We're all unique, and one of the probably most common ways of lording it over is that you have to be like me. We see this in relationships. People are incompatible because I failed in trying to just make you like me. And so, actually, when we can celebrate the diversity of souls, I actually said that. We can celebrate. In other words, if in relationships between devotees, we have to have that basic respect that the other person is a unique soul with their own unique nature. And of course, here we're talking about propensities for service, not propensities to forget Krishna, because everyone also has their own unique way of forgetting Krishna. But here we're talking about everyone's unique way of serving Krishna. And that is that is loving friendship among Vaishnavas. That each Vaishnava, by seeing the unique spiritual qualities of another devotee, is realizing more about Krishna, because everyone is part of Krishna. And so, what did Prabhupada say? He said that one time Prabhupada received a letter from a devotee in New York, actually, New York Temple, was acting sort of as temporary GVC or something. And this is many years ago, of course. And he was complaining because he was instituting these systems, all these systems. And I mean, there has to be some systems. Prabhupada himself instituted some systems like the morning program or the evening program and so on. But he was like trying to really regiment everything. and the devotees weren't cooperating. And Prabhupada wrote back a letter chastising him and saying that basically something like, they're not just toy soldiers that you wind up, that that everyone is unique. And so obviously you can go to the other extreme and it just becomes chaos. Like you can have so much diversity, it just becomes dysfunctional chaos. So there are extremes. You need guardrails on both sides. But the point is that each one of us is unique. And that's Krishna's opulence. Just like when Krishna is, we put a flower garland on Radha and Krishna, they're different colored flowers. And so there are different devotees with different propensities serving the Lord. And altogether it makes up the spiritual world. And each devotee is unique. Each, so there's no one anywhere in any of the millions of universes who's exactly like you. There is no duplicate of you anywhere in Krishna's creation. So each one is unique. And yet it's the Veda Veda, one and different, actually technically different in one, Veda Veda. So and yet somehow or other, because devotees love Krishna, because they want to see Krishna's mission flourish, therefore all these unique devotees cooperate together and form a team, and everyone gives a little here and gives a little there, so that it is a team, isn't it? Actually, so that's because otherwise, if we just have a society of rugged individualists, that there's a word for that, chaos. So we are simultaneously individual and social. We are simultaneously private and public. And there has to be a balance. If someone is just all public, there's not much inside. It's just whatever that person's got. You can see it right there on the surface. And yet in Bhakti Yoga, there is also a certain private meditation, a certain sense of one's own self, which is not just a public exhibit. And so we do have a private life in Krishna consciousness. And at the same time, we have a public life. And it's really all about balancing these things. So, anyway, going on. So, the conditioned soul, even in the position of a Brahma, forgets this, forgets that we are all eternal servants of Krishna. By the influence of illusory material energy generated out of false egoism, one can counteract such false egoism by invoking God consciousness. Liberation means getting out of the slumber of forgetfulness. Forgetfulness. Back to home, back to Godhead. We have to remember who we really are. So liberation means getting out of the slumber of forgetfulness and becoming situated in the real loving service of the Lord, as exemplified in the case of Brahma. The service of Brahma is the sample of service in liberation. The sample, beautiful writing, the sample of service in liberation, distinguished from the so-called altruistic services full of mistakes and forgetfulness. Liberation is never inaction, but service without human mistakes. Yeah, liberation is never inaction, but service without human mistakes. So, any question on this amazing purport?
I was just reflecting on forgetfulness because it's been probably many years since I read this purport, and it's completely new. It's like I don't remember Prabhupada saying these things, or maybe it didn't register with me in the same way. So can you also speak about how, as time goes on, when we hear Prabhupada's purports, that we can have more understanding of them?
Well, it's like if you're a little child growing up in some house, and then if you go back there years later, you see many things you didn't see before. So, yes, as we advance, as we mature in Krishna consciousness, we we can understand things, we can see things we couldn't see before. Spiritual cognitive development. So, any other question? If not, thank you all for listening and everyone who's listening remotely. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.